Hello everybody, it is Katie here from the Queen of Teen Fiction, and it is time to share with you all the books that I have been reading throughout May. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is one that I finished just the other day, and it is You Know Me Well by Nina LaCour and David Levithan. This is my proof copy of the book, but I really want to get myself a finished copy because the finished copy is gorgeous. This book! One of my favourite reads from 2016 so far. Hands down. I was very excited to read this book, so I had high expectations going in. It didn't disappoint. I loved every single page. It was everything I wanted it to be and more. This book follows two characters, Mark and Kate, throughout Pride Week in San Francisco. On the first night of Pride, Mark is out with his best friend Ryan, who he's in love with, and Kate is about to meet the girl of her dreams for the first time. This girl, Violet, is the cousin of Kate's best friend, and she's been hearing stories about her for so long and seen her pictures, and now she's finally going to meet her, and she panics and runs. She ends up in the same club as Mark and Ryan. Mark and Kate have been sitting next to each other in a class for a whole year but haven't said a word to each other. They bump into each other and they become very fast friends from that moment on. The tagline for this book is "It's friends at first sight." So the minute I read that tagline alone, I knew that I really wanted to read this book. It's also a split narrative, so it follows Mark and Kate separately. And I just loved it. I loved everything about it. Mark and Kate are so hilarious, and the way their friendship just develops so quickly over the space of Pride Week is just perfect. All of the other characters are so fantastic as well. The dialogue is brilliant and witty. Kate's love story with Violet is so beautiful. Kate is definitely a character that I connected to a lot because she's got so many fears and anxieties about her future and about going to college because she's a senior. She's supposed to be going to UCLA, but she doesn't quite feel ready for any of that. And so every time she has a good moment in her life, all of those anxieties come creeping in. And I definitely related to that a lot because a lot of what she was going through is stuff that I've felt before. So I really felt a lot of the quotes that she was saying. Mark's story is a little bit more painful. Being in love with his best friend Ryan. Ryan hasn't quite accepted his sexuality yet. He's not ready to share it with the world the same way Mark is. That starts to change throughout the course of this book. While he goes to Pride Week, he starts to open up more, but Ryan ends up flirting with another guy named Taylor. And Mark doesn't quite know how to handle that because Mark has had Ryan to himself for all these years and now suddenly he's with another guy. So a lot of Mark's story is him coming to terms with that, and a lot of the heartbreaking scenes in this book come from that relationship. There are so many fantastic characters in this book and some of the scenes are just so on point. The final few chapters, the emotions. There's a scene at the end of Pride Week at the end of this book and it's just so perfectly written. Yeah, I love this book so much. Next book that I read in May is Caramel Heart by E.R. Murray. This book follows 14-year-old Liv, who's being looked after by her older sister Hattie, whilst their mother is in a recovery centre for her addiction to alcohol. Liv ends up finding her mum's old recipe book from when her mum had aspirations to open a bakery, and Liv decides to start trying some of these recipes and actually finds that she really loves baking. But her and her sister don't have very much money, so she finds it difficult to pay for the ingredients that she needs to use, but because she enjoys baking so much, she wants to carry on with it. And so finding money for those ingredients becomes a bit of a problem for her, and she ends up getting herself into some difficult situations in order to get those ingredients. His sister Hattie was studying at university, but she's had to take some time out to look after Liv and prevent her from going into care. With Liv only being 14, she doesn't always appreciate what Hattie is sacrificing to look after her little sister, and so she ends up saying some quite cruel things to Hattie. So Liv isn't a perfect character, she makes a lot of mistakes and she has a lot of flaws, but I love that that's demonstrated in this book because she is only a 14-year-old. You do make a lot of mistakes at that age, but you learn from it. So this is a really gritty YA book. Not only does it deal with the harsh sides of addiction, it also deals with bullying, and of course first crushes are thrown in there as well. So it's got a lot packed into this book. And also the recipes from the book that Liv finds are dotted throughout this book. I wanted to try baking these things, even though I cannot bake for shit. Seriously. don't ever let me try and bake. So this is one that I didn't expect to like as much as I did, so I'm very glad that I gave it a try. The next book is The Square Root of Summer by Harriet Ruta Hapgood. This book was very unusual, and I definitely didn't go into it expecting what I actually got. I thought this book was more contemporary than anything else. Even though it kind of mentions going back and forth through time in the blurb, I didn't actually expect wormholes and time travel. But that is what I got. This book follows Gotti in the summer after her grandfather's death. Her grandfather meant a huge deal to her, and so she feels his loss very deeply. And this is the first summer without him around. Her brother comes back from art school for the summer, and her brother's best friend Jason also returns. Unbeknown to her brother Ned, Jason was actually Gotti's secret boyfriend the previous summer. Also reappearing in Gotti's life is her former best friend Thomas. Thomas used to live by Gotti when they were kids, but then Thomas had to move to Canada and she hasn't heard from him since. So he is also back in her life. Gotti's going through such a whirlwind of emotions, and then time actually starts unravelling and wormholes start appearing and they suck Gotti in and show her memories from last summer. So I wasn't expecting such a sci-fi element to this book at all. And you wouldn't guess that judging it by the cover, so yeah. Don't judge a book by its cover, kids. This was very sci-fi. Yeah, so the characters are really great, the plot is very intriguing, and I really enjoyed this book. The next book that I read in May is The Museum of Heartbreak by Meg Leder. Firstly, this book is very aesthetically pleasing. Look at the cover. Look at the back. It's a very pretty book. I like pretty books. So the story. The story is also very pretty. The book follows 16-year-old Penelope. She meets this new guy called Keats who is gorgeous and she's very attracted to him. She goes to one of his parties in an attempt to try and connect with him, and she actually manages that. And so unbelievably they do start dating. So Penelope has actually got the cute guy that she's been crushing on. But then she realises that maybe Keats isn't what she built him up to be in her head, and this relationship really isn't what she wants. And this book explores how Penelope deals with her happily ever after not really being her happily ever after. She ends up collecting items from this period in her life to create the Museum of Heartbreak. She creates it for a specific reason, but obviously I'm not going to say that because spoilers. But at the start of each chapter in the book there is a little sketch of the item and a little bit of background information on it. This book also deals with friendships and how they change at that age as well. Penelope has been best friends with Ephraim and Audrey for a long time. They've grown up together, but that starts changing. Audrey has a new friend and she spends more time with her. Penelope's relationship with Ephraim starts changing. Things become weird between them. So Penelope ends up making new friends, Grace and Miles, who I love, by the way. Their addition to the story was fantastic because they are great characters and they're very funny. But the book kind of shows Penelope realising that friendships change and that she might not be friends with Audrey forever, but she is right now and that's what matters. But she also learns that it's okay for her to make new friends and that she can make new friends. She doesn't just have to stick with Audrey and Ephraim all the time. So I love that this book dealt with that. All in all, it's a really great coming of age story. It's a really good contemporary, so if you like contemporary reads then you'll definitely love this one. The next book is Not If I See You First by Erik Lindstrom. This is a proof copy of the book, so the cover is just braille, but the finished cover looks more like the spine. But the cover is braille because the protagonist of this story, Parker Grant, is blind. Years beforehand, Parker was in an accident that killed her mother and left her without her sight. When we join Parker in this book, her father has actually just died as well, and so her aunt's family have moved in with Parker so that Parker can keep the house and that they can look after her. What I really loved about this book though is that it's not a sob story. It's not about Parker being blind. She doesn't wallow in self-pity and spend the whole book being sad about the fact that she's blind. That's something that she accepts in her life and she gets on with it and she doesn't let it hold her back. So I'd say this story isn't really a book about blind girl. It's a contemporary story in which the main character just happens to be blind. I think that's why I really enjoyed the story. Parker is just an average teenager. She just can't see. In this book, Parker's high school merges with another high school in the town, and so those students end up coming to her school. One of those students is her former best friend and ex-boyfriend, Scott. She hasn't spoken with Scott ever since he broke one of her rules. Parker has a list of rules that she wants people to follow with regards to her being blind. Scott broke one of those rules years ago. They haven't spoken since. So suddenly she is forced into a school with him and has to face him again. So it was a great story, and Parker is a really hilarious character. She's very cynical. She's a no-fuss kind of girl. She will tell it like it is, and I absolutely adore her honesty. I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad that I got the chance to read it. The next book is Breathing Water by S.R. Atkinson. Unless you couldn't tell from the cover, this book is about mermaids, or as they're known in this book, Ceres. Breathing Water follows a character called Santiago. She is a human, but she knows how to breathe underwater because when she was a child, she met a Serra named Rogan. He taught her how humans are able to breathe when they're submerged. Because of that, she ends up going underwater a lot throughout her childhood. Her and Rogan grow up being best friends, and the Serras end up accepting Santiago. Sirens end up attacking the Serras in a brutal fight. Santiago is 12 when it happens, and she's in the water and witnessing it. The Serras tell her to go to the surface to be safe, which she does. After that, she doesn't return to the water. And so the story picks up 6 years on when Santiago is 18. She decides to finally go back in the water and find her friend. This story had great world building. I loved learning about the Serras and the sirens and the mythology of it all. It's a very interesting concept, but I didn't really connect with Santiago that much. It follows Santiago in third person, and then suddenly it switches to first person to follow a character called Nephrium. She is an older Serra who gets captured by humans, and she spends years in captivity. I found her story a lot more interesting than Santiago's. I don't know why I didn't connect with Santiago. I just didn't. Also, she is 18, but didn't feel 18 to me. I liked her friendship with Rogan, but since this is the first book in a trilogy, I'm assuming that will probably turn romantic at some point. Yeah, I don't know. I had really mixed emotions about it. I like the world and the fantasy side of it, but the characters, I'm not really connecting with them at this point. So the last book that I read this month is on my Kindle, and it is The Foxhole Court by Nora Sakavic. This book has been recommended to me by several people on Tumblr, so I decided to finally start reading it in May. I won't lie, I did not expect to like this book at all. It's the first in a trilogy called All for the Game. However, it is self-published, and I'm always looking for good self-published stories because I think independent authors are wonderful. So I was interested to pick it up, but from reading the blurb I didn't expect myself to like it because it's a book that features mafia-style crime and also sports. They're two things that I don't really read about at all. So yeah, I didn't expect to like it. Throughout the first few chapters, even then, I was thinking, this book isn't for me and I'm going to disappoint everyone that recommended it to me because I'm not enjoying it. But then suddenly I got completely sucked in and I ended up really loving this book. So The Foxhole Court follows Neil, who is 18. When we first start the book, we don't really know much about him at all. He's been on the run for years, he's had various different names and identities. We don't really know his full backstory. He's about to graduate high school and he's planning to run again. However, a coach from Palmetto State University corners him after a game of Xe and asks him to come and play at the Foxhole Court back in the university. So the sport in this series, Xe, is a fictional sport. I love the creation of this sport. Like I said, sport isn't something that I usually read about in YA, but I ended up really enjoying Xe. So anyway, Neil, against everything he believes in, goes to Palmetto State regardless and ends up deciding to play with the Foxes. So we get to meet their team, and they're a wild bunch of characters. And when I was first meeting them all in the book, I was like, why do people on Tumblr love these characters so much? So yeah, these characters are really messed up, but it drew me in and had me so intrigued to find out what the hell was going on. I'm struggling to summarise the plot for you. Basically, I think it's a book that you've just got to read for yourself to see if you enjoy it. I can't find a way to summarise it in order to try and get you to read it. I will say I don't think it's everybody's cup of tea, but you might surprise yourself because I didn't think it was my cup of tea. And now I've ended up really emotionally attached to these characters, and I'm about to start reading the second book. It's very different to anything I've ever read before, and like I said, it's self-published, so There's no censorship really. Whatever Nora wanted to write about is in there. If these books were to have been published, I do think a lot of the story would have had to be cut out and edited. So I'm very glad that it's self-published and that we don't get that censorship. Because it is dark, it is twisted, these characters are older, so I wouldn't really describe it as YA. I'd say it's more new adult, even though I don't really like that genre, new adult. But yeah, I'd say it's probably in that age range. The first book is free to download on Kindle though, so if you want to give it a try, then you've got the perfect opportunity to. But yeah, very glad I read it, considering I didn't think I was going to like it. So please do let me know what you've been reading throughout May, what you're looking forward to reading throughout June. Let me know all the bookish things in the comments. Do you like the sound of any of the books that I've mentioned today? Let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!